We use vehicles in virtually every walk of life, whether to travel from place to place, to access places we otherwise wouldn't be able to, or simply to have fun. But the biggest problem is how much they can cost when you buy them from a company that's devoted huge amounts of resources to develop them. You could alternatively try to build your ideal ride at home. And while this may seem like a pipe dream at first, there are plenty of people who have done just that. From helicopters to submarines, and even a car worthy of a super wealthy superhero. It's time to take a look at the top 15 most impressive homemade vehicles. Number 15. 18,000 horsepower twin-jet supercar. Ferrari. They're the dream car of so many people thanks to their looks and raw speed. It almost seems wrong to modify them in any way. But if you have an insatiable need for speed and don't think yours is fast enough, then the only option is to undertake some significant work to give it a boost. Ryan McQueen couldn't afford a Ferrari of his own, but even if he could, it wouldn't have been fast enough for him. He decided to then build one of his own, and this led him on a 14-year project which cost $100,000 to create an absolute monster. Amazingly, McQueen says he learned everything he needed to know by watching videos on YouTube, and these taught him how to completely redesign the drivetrain and where the power comes from. He installed two Rolls-Royce Viper engines that were originally designed for experimental aircraft for the US and British Air Forces and provide a combined 14,000 pounds of thrust and the equivalent of a whopping 18,000 horsepower. To create the look of the car, he took a radio-controlled scale model of a Ferrari Enzo and cut it into 26 pieces before using an overhead projector to increase the size tenfold. He then overlaid them on plywood, which was cut and filled with styrofoam, and the bodywork was placed on top. Incredibly, the finished vehicle has a theoretical maximum speed of around 400 miles or 644 kilometers per hour, but not even McQueen has yet built up the courage to prove this in the real world. Engine tests in his garage when he was building it caused serious damage that he had to repair, so there's the risk that running at full speed too soon would be catastrophic. Instead, the plans are to conduct some low-speed trials, and once the vehicle has undergone extensive diagnostic tests to see how it performs, he hopes to one day unleash its full potential. Number 14. Pool Table Car. The pool table car was created by Joe Fischella from Triangle Billiards in California and began life as a 1998 Chevrolet Monte Carlo before being converted. Steel reinforcement was installed to support the weight of the table, while at the same time retaining all of the vital components to allow the car to still be driven. It wouldn't have been good enough to simply install a table on the bed of a truck, because players wouldn't be able to access all of the angles they need. So this creation covers the entire space, so crowds of people can gather around to watch the game unfold. Once a winner's been declared, the table slides towards the rear, the doors and windshield can be put back in place, and the car is ready to drive at speeds of up to 100 miles or 161 kilometers per hour. The pool table wasn't the only addition either. They also added a refrigerator, a pop-up LCD TV, an expensive sound system, and an automatic stabilization platform to ensure the table is always flat. With all this in a car, who needs a house? Number 13. Helicopter. We're used to having a variety of personal vehicles, such as cars, bikes, and even boats, but there's yet to be a mass-market flying vehicle available at a reasonable price level for everyday consumers. While we may still be quite a ways off this becoming a reality, some inventors aren't willing to wait and have taken matters into their own hands. Possibly the most famous example of this is a creation by Ken Wallace, a former wing commander in the British Royal Air Force. In the late 1960s, he designed, developed, and built his own autogyro, which is a helicopter-like aircraft. Known as the Wallace WA-116 Agile, he built a number of different versions, with the most powerful one being fitted with a 120 horsepower Meteor Alpha supercharged two-stroke engine. At 11 feet, or about 3.3 meters long, with a two-bladed fixed-pitch pusher propeller, the vehicle is able to reach a maximum altitude of 10,000 feet, or just over 3,000 meters, a top speed of 100 miles or 161 kilometers per hour, and an operating range of 241 miles, or about 388 kilometers. Number 12. The Limo Jet. Most car modifications involve adding new elements to the frame of a car, but this next one's a little different because it was the car parts that were added on last. A company called Jet Sitter, which hires out private jets and limos to wealthy customers, saw that there were benefits provided by both types of vehicle, so decided to combine the two. Jets are designed to keep people in the utmost of comfort when they're in the sky, and in many ways better at the job than most limos. The company had a jet that was nearing the end of its service life, so they decided instead of scrapping it, they'd turn it into the world's only Limo Jet. It was a project that began in 2006 and took 12 years to complete, but the effort was more than worth it. The vehicle, of course, no longer flies, but it's now road legal, and it's surely the coolest limo you could ever turn up at an event in. Serious effort's been put into converting the exterior to look like it's always been designed that way, with lights in the engines and custom-designed wheels. Everyone enters and exits the limo through the original stairs of the jet, and once you're inside, the party can really get started. There's a 4,500-watt stereo system, a lighting rig, a bar, and even a dance floor. But for those guests who want to sit and be entertained, there's also a huge TV screen and plenty of legroom. It truly is one of a kind, and since it's built from the fuselage of a multi-million-dollar private jet, you're not going to see too many of these on the road. Number 11. Submarine. There's not hardly any type of vehicle that it is impossible to build yourself, as teenager Justin Beckerman proved in 2013 when he revealed his homemade submarine. What's more, it only cost him around $2,000 because most of the parts he used were scavenged or recycled. With room inside for one person, the main body of the sub was made from drainage pipes and the hatch from a skylight, and it's complete with ballast tanks to help maintain a steady depth and orientation, air vents to the surface that provide a steady flow of oxygen, and even safety apparatus like backup batteries, a siren, a strobe light, and pump for leaks, and an oxygen tank. Called the Nautilus after Captain Nemo's vessel in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it's able to submerge to a depth of 30 feet, or about 9 meters, and stay there for up to 2 hours. It's fully wired to provide power to the propulsion, the radio so we can keep in contact with the surface at all times, a series of high-powered lights on the exterior, and the video camera that broadcasts a feed of what's beneath the sub to a monitor inside. Asked what he wanted to do next, Beckerman replied that he wanted to add a remote-controlled claw to the front so he could pick things up from the lake bed, and that he was going back to the drawing board for his next great invention. Number 10. Wooden VW Beetle. Both for cost and practical reasons, most production cars around the world are made from a combination of metal and plastic, but this gives them all a certain aesthetic that's not exactly what everyone's looking for. And if you want something more similar to the early days of car travel, you might well have to build one for yourself. Mower from Bosnia used to love the style and design of the iconic Volkswagen Beetle, but he didn't want one just like everyone else had, nor was he able to afford one. He decided then to make one to his own specifications, and that's how this incredible wooden Beetle came into being. To make it, he collected more than 50,000 pieces of sculpted oak, which were meticulously fitted together to create the exterior and the interior of the car. The only parts not covered with wood are the headlights and the taillights, and this ensured that it would be fully street legal. But Bocek himself admits that he tended to drive his prized possession incredibly slowly because he doesn't want to risk even a minor bump or scratch that could take a long time to fix. Number 9. Alien Car. Mike Vetter, who runs a car building shop, is known for creating a range of radical designs, but the most impressive one is that he built himself at home and first displayed in 2021. It's possibly the most futuristic car you'll ever see on the road, and it's called the Vetter Extraterrestrial Vehicle. With a teardrop-shaped exterior and a windshield that's longer than it is wide, all 4 wheels are hidden within the design, something that apparently doesn't affect its turning ability at all. Visibility is an issue, however, but Vetter overcomes this hurdle by installing rear-view cameras. The shape of the vehicle certainly takes some getting used to, but once you're aware of how long it is, it's like driving anything else. Featuring a General Motors 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, the power is routed to the front wheels by an automatic transmission, and the doors, which look like they've been salvaged from a modern supercar, were actually specifically designed for this. What's perhaps the most surprising element of the extraterrestrial car, though, is that it was built for less than $100,000, proving that with a little know-how, you could potentially build the unique supercar of your dreams for less than a new Ferrari or Lamborghini would cost. Number 8. Hoverbike. With increasingly efficient engine technology, it's becoming possible to create designs that just a few decades ago would have seemed impossible. And while larger manufacturing companies aren't exactly releasing a range of futuristic machines to enthusiasts, if you have an idea, are dedicated to it, and are willing to learn engineering skills, then you can build just about anything. A popular device that's more than feasible to build in your backyard is a hoverbike. Working on a very similar principle to drones, backyard inventors around the world have come up with various designs of how to make the concept work. What's usually common between them all is that there's a seated position at the center, one that's often made from the chassis of a motorbike, but had its wheels removed, and in their place giant horizontal fans are installed. These can be hooked up to the bike's engine to provide enough power, and if it's done right, you can hover several feet off the ground. Of course, it takes some practice to balance properly, and there are some serious safety questions of having such large fan blades whirring around so close. But there's no reason why in the future we can't all have one of these to help us get around our backyards. Number 7. Train. It's not often that you might consider owning your own train. After all, they're designed to run on tracks, and you're not exactly allowed to fit your own onto a national network to use. But if you live near an abandoned railway, it could well prove to be one of the most enjoyable ways to travel. That's what the inventor decided to do in this video, and he made use of a 12.5-mile or 20-kilometer long stretch of track that had been abandoned for more than a decade. He built a wooden rail cart completely from scratch, which included an 8-horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine with a bootleg transmission made from lawnmower parts to power the wheels. According to the creator, it had a top speed of 31 miles or 50 kilometers per hour, but this wasn't in any way limited by the power of the engine. Instead, this was because of the sturdiness of the wooden frame and the state of the rails, which meant that it would vibrate a frightening amount at that speed. While this was his first attempt, he planned on building a more rigid structure with a more powerful engine, and if he ever does, he hopes it'll be able to go 2 or 3 times faster. Number 6. Lawnmower GoKart. You've more than likely seen homeowners, particularly those with large backyards, having lawnmowers that are much more like small tractors, which can be sat on and driven around the garden instead of relying on being pushed around. They enable you to cover a much larger area while in complete comfort. But have you ever wondered just how fast they can go, and whether you could race them? Since they're built like small vehicles and have a powerful enough engine to move around and power the mower blades at the same time, they can be turned into surprisingly nimble and fast go-karts. All you need to do is remove the unnecessary bodywork and machinery, tweak a few parts, and add some new wheels, and you're ready to go. Inventors around the world have given this a go, and some of the results are incredible. It's actually now such a popular pastime that regular lawnmower races are organized, which give the inventors opportunities to show off their latest designs and encourage them to push their ideas much further than anyone would think possible. Number 5. The Kraken Submarine. The Kraken is a homemade submarine that was built by 3 American farmers from Kentucky who used their ingenious creativity to design a submarine like no other. Initial trials saw it successfully submerge more than 32 feet or about 9.7 meters deep, and they plan to take it even further. The main part of the vessel is made from 2 huge recycled liquid propane gas storage cylinders. The larger of the 2 containers, the main body of the craft, and the smaller was welded on top to give headroom to people inside. Steel beams were attached to give rigidity to the structure, and the whole thing is electrically powered with a hydraulic system that controls the propeller and the rudder. To view the surroundings, the Kraken was built with 6 windows and has a hatch that opens upwards to save space on the inside. Twin diving planes that are attached to the front enable the sub to be maneuvered when in the water and give full control over its depth, orientation, diving, and surfacing. Finally, the farmers decided to give their creation a new coat of paint, so they went with a gray body throughout, with blue on the ballast and control surfaces and black on the air cylinders. It's a great example of what's possible when you set your mind to it, but unlikely to be top of your list when thinking about how to spend your next vacation. Number 4. F1 cars. The cars used in Formula One racing series are the most advanced vehicles on Earth, with yearly development costs running into the hundreds of millions of dollars, and each one, on its own, worth several million. During a race, even the lightest amount of bodywork damage can cost more than an average annual salary to fix, and this means that there are very few people in the world able to actually own one for themselves. The alternative option for fans of the sport, however, is you could decide to build one for yourself and do it for far cheaper than the sports teams are able to. That's what Russ Boast and Mark Harrison from Essex in the UK did in 2013, and the performance of the vehicles was surprisingly impressive. Built entirely from scratch and designed to emulate the livery of a Ferrari and Red Bull racing car, the chassis are made from a steel frame with integral roll bars. The bodywork is made from fiberglass, and they have a 6-speed sequential gearbox and have a 190 horsepower ZZR 1400 motorcycle engine. Fully road legal, they're more practical than actual F1 cars too, because they're able to go over speed bumps and can carry a passenger if part of the interior cabin is removed. Still, they're able to accelerate from 0 to 60 in just about 3.5 seconds and have a top speed of 170 miles or 270 kilometers per hour. The most amazing thing about these cars, though, is that each one was built for around 28,000 pounds, which is roughly equivalent to $38,000, a significant price reduction on an actual F1 car and far more useful in the real world. Number 3. Jet ski. Water sports. They're some of the most popular recreational activities around the world, particularly in hot weather. But quite often, some of the more exhilarating pursuits can be hard to access. Unless you're staying at a resort or have a water sports venue near you, you'll rarely have the chance to ride a jet ski, for example, unless that is you can justify spending thousands of dollars on buying your own. But for a fraction of the price, an inventor has proven that it's possible to build one of your own. This one, for example, is built from reclaimed marine plywood and wood, which has been coated in waterproof paint. He then installed a 7.5 horsepower boat engine, which is connected to a propeller, and as you can see, he's able to pick up some reasonable speed on the water. You might be thinking that it's not a proper jet ski, and you'd be right, because the fiberglass ones you see shooting across the waves pump water through jets instead of using propellers. But since this one costs just a few $100 to make, no one's complaining. You've just got to be very careful, because without safety features you find on commercial models, the last thing you want to do is find yourself in the water with the propeller still spinning. Number 2. Batmobile. There's no doubt that Batman is one of the most badass superheroes of all time, and this is almost entirely due to the technology that he has at his disposal. One of the most recognizable tools that he has is the Batmobile, and a movie props artist from Michigan became so obsessed with the tumbler that featured in the Dark Knight movies that he built one of his own. Bob Dullum estimated that he spent between $50,000 and $70,000 to make it, and even fashioned a batsuit to wear while he's driving it. It was completely designed and built in his garage, and the only parts he bought were the tires, rims, brakes, and engine. Everything else, such as the body parts, brackets, and decorative elements on the exterior, were made from scratch. Amazingly, some of the techniques he developed to make this a reality have resulted in him being contacted by defense contractors, with the biggest breakthrough being the use of transparent aluminum in the windows to make them sturdy and bulletproof. While it's not street legal, the tumbler has some impressive stats to back it up. With a top speed of 150 miles or 240 kilometers per hour, it weighs around 2 tons, has vehicle cameras to give it a 360-degree field of view, and is powered by a 350 V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor. Number 1. Jetpack. Possibly the coolest mode of transportation that's seen in movies but rarely in real life is the jetpack. And currently, the only way to truly have one is to build it yourself. Clearly inspired by the wish to be a real-life Iron Man, Richard Browning, a British inventor, unveiled the Daedalus flight pack in 2016, and it's probably the closest that anyone's got to a practical design. It uses 6 micro-gas turbines to provide the thrust, and these are attached to the user by metal frames. There's an inbuilt heads-up display that provides all the data needed to fly safely, such as speed, how much fuel is left, altitude, and temperature gauges. And this allows the user, after practice, to safely reach an altitude of up to 2,000 feet, or about 609 meters, and speeds of up to 35 miles or 56 kilometers per hour. Currently, the flight pack has an operational time of up to 10 minutes because of how much fuel it can hold, and cost around $250,000 to build. But Browning expects that the price will fall rapidly with further development, and the flight time will be improved to be more practical within a few years. Who knows, within a decade, this could be how we all get around. Watch our Vehicles playlist for more top 15 videos about amazing vehicles. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best vehicle videos.